It is yet another Victory Friday edition of Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton here on 580 WIBW. They said it couldn't be done. They were doubted. They were counted out. But your Kansas City Royals have now won 6 consecutive games and are officially the hottest team in Major League Baseball. No other team, all 29 other teams, no one has won as many games in a row as of this moment as the Kansas City Royals. They have the longest active winning streak in MLB right now. It is glorious. It is beautiful. It's a great day to be a Royals fan, which I've not been able to say much with this entire program at any moment in time. It's awesome. Fulton Cast here with you. Thank you for joining me. Jake LeBon is off for most of today. There's a small chance he might trickle in, but Jake, due to some prior engagements, is off today. So he mainly just me rolling with you on this lovely Friday afternoon here in the capital city. Again, a Victory Friday edition of the show. The Royals have won 6 in a row. They head to Philadelphia tonight to begin a series with the Phils after they won 9-2 over the New York Mets yesterday afternoon, complete a sweep of the Mets, their second consecutive sweep, a perfect 6-0 homestand, which you just love to see. You love to see so very much. And it was an awesome game. Brady Singer was dominant. The offense went crazy. Drew Waters hit a bomb. Bobby Jr. hit one of the loudest home runs I've ever heard in my life. That sounded that bat was like an actual cannon firing off. It was awesome. It was great. So we will talk about that today, but we have also just a lot to get to on the show today. We're going to talk a lot more Royals than normal, both on the pitching that has led the Royals in this winning streak, as well as preview the Royals and the Phillies coming up later on in the 2 o'clock hour. David Lesky is going to join me at the bottom of the 1 o'clock hour to chat about these red-hot Royals as well. Dave and I are going to chat about some positive Royals news for once. That is definitely something new. We have more college realignment talks, and it's more concrete because, folks, this came out near the bottom of the 11 o'clock hour. Oregon and Washington are officially joining the Big Ten. They have been offered membership. They are expected to accept it. The Pac-12 is dead. And we've talked a lot of realignment, and we're going to talk more in the 1 o'clock hour. This all needs to be discussed, and there are things that need to be ironed out. But it's a sad day for college football. I'm not going to make, any small bit of it. And I'm going to make it very clear, and it's what it is. In all of this, at the heart of all of this in college football, this is a sad day for college football because Oregon and Washington are headed to the Big Ten, which likely means Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah probably coming to the Big 12, and the Pac-12 is functionally going to cease to exist. We will get to all of that coming up in the 1 o'clock hour of the show. We're going to hear from several members of the Kansas City Chiefs on today's program. Head coach Andy Reid spoke after training camp today. It was a red zone day at training camp on a very wet training camp day in St. Joe. We will hear from head coach Andy Reid. We will hear from running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire, who spoke a while at training camp today, answered a lot of questions. And the thing, as much as I think Clyde, this might be a swan song for him as a Kansas City Chief, I have just always appreciated and once again get to appreciate his willingness to just be open and speak and chat with the media, and more importantly, just be so open about what he's experiencing and what he's thinking. It's always been a great trait of Clyde's, and we get to hear from him today as well. We will also be joined by Jesse Newell, our good friend Jesse Newell, the Kansas City Star. He's going to join us to chat about Chiefs training camp as well as he was up in St. Joe. We will talk to Jesse at the top of the 2 o'clock hour. As always, you can join in on the conversation on our text line, 785-272-9429. You can also jump in the comment section of our YouTube live streams. Go to youtube.com. Sports on 580 is that YouTube channel. So if you haven't, we would appreciate it. We are now well over 300. Thank all of you for that help. Though I think it's all because you all just want to see more of Dan is what I'm starting to figure out. So maybe we'll just pump out more Dan content and you'll all subscribe more. Who knows? You can jump in to the comment section of our YouTube live stream as well. Some point today, we will give away Royals tickets because, like Jake and I said, we're not stopping until they lose. They keep winning. We keep giving away tickets. That is how this works. That's the system. That's what we do. So at some point today, be listening. We're going to give away more Royals tickets on the show today. But where we start are with the Kansas City Royals. And I kind of want to start this and put this into context. I want to address a comment right off the bat that our good friend Vance on our YouTube comments. Vance, we always appreciate you. And we appreciate all of you as well. Chiming in here with a thought that I actually want to address because I've heard this from more than just Vance. To which Vance says, just can't get excited with the Royals. They're still on pace to have the worst season in the history of the franchise. To which is correct. And I want to caveat all this. I want to put all this together because that sentiment, Vance, that you have here, which is fair and correct. I want you to understand, and it's for all of you out there. If any of you are feeling that and just haven't expressed it, textually, I guess, not verbally because it's over a text line, whatever. If any of you are out there feeling it, I want you to know, I'm not saying it's wrong to feel that way. All feelings are valid. It's always valid to feel your feelings. You should feel your feelings. But here's what I'll say about that as well in the context of this winning streak. Because it is true. Despite the 6-game winning streak, which is giving some of us a short-term high, which is great, by the way. Especially when you're as deeply emotionally connected to this team as I am. There is something to be said about the way this winning streak is happening that I do ask all of you to allow yourself to get excited about the future of this team through this winning streak. Yes, the fact of the matter is, despite winning 6 in a row, the Royals are going to lose 100 games. They're likely going to lose 107 and more, and this is going to be the worst season in the history of the Kansas City Royals franchise. They dug themselves such a big hole to start that's going to happen. And I've accepted that. And I know many of you have accepted that as well, albeit probably begrudgingly. But the fact of the matter is this. I want to break down a very important part of this winning streak that I think should make all of you excited about what the Royals can do. And I know that's hard, but I ask you to bear with me and look at something. The Royals have now won 6 in a row. They beat the Mets and the Twins and the Mets over this series. 6 wins in a row, perfect homestand. They did it thanks to some very good offense. They scored 40 runs over the 6-game winning streak. The extra inning rule and extra innings does help pump up those numbers. But overall, they did score a lot of runs, and they did really well, including putting up a 9th spot on the Mets yesterday. But there's something more important, and this is the thing that I want to point to, and I ask all of you to let it make you just a little bit excited about what this team could be. It's the starting pitching. The Royals, over this streak, have gotten some tremendous starting pitching performances, including just as recently as yesterday when Brady Singer, was awesome. Singer yesterday, 8 innings, 3 hits, no runs. The day before that, Cole Reagans, 6 innings, 7 hits, no runs. Zach Greinke, the day before that, 5 innings, 4 hits, 1 run. Ryan Yarbrough in his final start for the Royals to get the 3rd straight win. 7 innings, 7 hits, 1 run. Jordan Lyles in win number 2 against the Twins. 5 innings, 4 hits, 3 runs. And Brady Singer, who has bookended that series. In its first start against Minnesota, 5 innings, 4 hits, 2 runs, 10 strikeouts. Those are all legitimately good starts. You had 3 starts that went just 5 innings, which are a fine length. You maybe like a little bit deeper, but they kept you in the game because no one allowed more than 3 runs. Even Jordan Lyles, my resident punching bag of how bad he is, kept you in the game. 5 innings, 3 runs, Jordan Lyles, I will take that every day of the week. But your youngest, Singer looked good. Cole Reagans, buddy, get on the Cole Reagans hype train. Our seats are filling up very quickly. Get your tickets. And that's the part where I ask all of you to be excited. And to Vance's credit, we're going to go back and forth here. Vance, you are excited for the young talent, as you should be. I get, if you want to tell me you can't be excited about anything the Royals do this year on just an overall basis, I get you. The record's going to be crap. It's going to be terrible. They're going to end up starting to lose some more games here soon. I'm with you. But none of us lose sight of the young talent and what they're showing. Because it goes even a little bit deeper than just what is happening over this particular winning streak. Because what I want to talk about even more than that is behind these starts, what it means for the long-term direction of the team that has led to some of this positivity. And what do I mean by that? What does that rambling of words mean to any of you? It means this. Let's look at, most importantly, the last two starts, Cole Reagans and Brady Singer, because they each tell me something. Let's start with the most recent. Let's start with our good friend, Brady Singer, because oh my goodness, was he good yesterday. Brady Singer now has really started to figure something out. He's really started to figure out who he is, what he's trying to be, what he's trying to accomplish. And the big thing is the sinker was working and the slider was working. And he's getting better with this changeup. Brady Singer yesterday threw 9 changeups, which some of you, I know, immediately say, wow, 9. Why are you getting excited about 9 changeups? Because he threw 100 pitches. 9 changeups equate easily 9 out of 100 to 9%. 9% of his pitches that he threw yesterday were changeups, which you might say, well, he only threw it 9% of the time. How is that good? For Brady Singer, he never needs to throw the changeup a lot. Never. Not once does that pitch need ever even more than at max like 13% of what he throws. But he has to show it. He has to show it, and he has to show it enough to make it be in a hitter's head. To make them go, yeah, I can sit sinker slider, and I can just try and guess which way it's running that day. But there's also a chance it's the changeup. There's a chance that crafty righty will find a way to just throw one of his 9 to me, and I'm going to look like an idiot. And if you can make a hitter have to think for even a half second longer, that's how you succeed in this game. And that, to me, is the most encouraging sign. And the fact that Brady throwing it more means he's getting a little bit more confidence in it. But also, moreover than just that, he's getting, at least probably through the coaching, and I can't guarantee it's through the coaching staff, but I'd have to imagine that they are continuing to hound home to Brady. You need that changeup. They've tinkered with it. They changed it. He originally threw what's called a circle change, which for those of you baseball people, you know what I'm talking about here. For you non-baseball people, essentially it's a changeup on your back right 3 fingers, your index, your not your index, your middle, your ring, and your pinky. You hold the baseball on those 3, and you make an okay sign for the visual people here. If you're on the YouTube stream, you're seeing what I'm doing here. Terrestrial radio, try with my description. You hold it on those 3 fingers, and you make kind of essentially an okay sign with your hand. Or more importantly, you make a circle with your index and your thumb. And when you throw that in the way with some more complicated mechanics, and this is a really, really rough way of explaining this also, and I was never a pitcher, so it's even more rough that an infielder is teaching you pitching right now. If I had Dan here, it'd be so much better. I need to have Dan teach you guys this. Nonetheless, that pitch throws up, and instead of a changeup that darts onto your arm side, so for Brady, going towards his right, Brady's right, away from a hitter. Well, it seems like they've tinkered with his changeup. Instead of throwing a circle change, he is starting to throw what's called a split change, or essentially a splitter. They're mildly different. The nuances are not important right now. The point is it's an off-speed variation that just goes straight down. Because, and I've kind of been on a trend of this, the only other issue I would ever have with Brady's changeup is the movement profile is very similar to his sinker. Their velocities are different, but the movement profiles are not perfectly, but slightly similar. The split change or splitter allows Brady to get more of just a straight downward drop. And it looks like they are tinkering with that, which is great. And I'm just very curious. And seeing that development, that speaks to pitching development, which is something we've talked about so much. I've talked about at length. Pitching development is changing, and the Royals are getting better. And one, that joke that the Royals can't develop pitching needs to go by the wayside, because I think it's so different now that joke doesn't really apply fully. But also, they're doing it, because the biggest evidence of that is Cole Reagans. And I mentioned this a bit on yesterday's show, recapping Cole Reagans' start. Cole Reagans, for when he came to the Royals, threw a cutter. And that cutter stunk. Like, really stunk. Like, he threw that and hitters were hitting it like 500 feet. It was bad. But a cutter and a slider are so similar. It takes minor tweaking to turn a cutter into a slider. And Cole Reagans came to the Royals. Andy Rogers, Newell.com, did a terrific report. She's done great work all year. A report where she said Cole Reagans came to Kansas City and told them, I need something to throw to left-handers. He had reverse splits. Lefties crushed him. He did fine against righties. Because he had a good changeup, and against righties, that works. Against lefties, not so much. And he said, what if I threw a slider? I think that would work. And the Royals were like, we were going to say the same thing. Let's get you a slider. And that's what they did, and that's part of why he was so successful in that start against the Mets. There's so much more we could go into, and David Lesky and I at the bottom of the 1 o'clock hour are going to go even more in depth into some of this. There are signs the young guys are the ones hitting. That's positive. Bywit Jr. had a homestand for the ages. Hit another home run yesterday. He's becoming a star. And that's good. But the Royals not only have young guys that are pitching, they're developing pitching. It's still a bit of a mess. There's still a long way to go. It is nowhere near completion. But there are positive, tangible signs that this team, this organization, is slowly beginning to move in the right direction. What that direction is, what that direction will be, how quickly will they get to the end, whether J.J. Piccolo's the guy through that entire direction, who knows? But the Royals are figuring something out. And that's something we haven't been able to say in Lord knows how long. So I get it. If the rest of the season you want to be kind of bummed, I understand. They're going to lose a franchise record number of games. Overall, that does stink. But I implore you, enjoy the high of the 6-game win streak. It is fleeting, but it is fun. And just never lose sight that there are young dudes in this system that are playing well. One of them you just recently got for a trade. And boy, do I like Cole Reagans, a.k.a. Danny Duffy 2.0. If you can't see it, I'm telling you, look back, realize that he's Danny Duffy 2.0. Not fully yet. I love Danny too much to say fully, but they're close enough. Either way, though, 6-game winning streak is awesome. It is fun. Starting pitching is heavily leading the way for the Royals, and it's just such a great time as well. We're going to talk more Royals again coming up at the bottom of the 1 o'clock hour as David Lesky, Events of the Crown, joins us to chat all things Royals. We'll also, again, chat more Chiefs at the bottom of this hour, and with Jesse at the top of the 2 o'clock hour, and like college realignment at the top of the 1 o'clock hour as well. Right now, we'll take our first time up on Mic'd Up. So in the midst of all this college realignment talk, and boy, do we have so much, and we will talk about more coming up in the 1 o'clock hour. Don't worry. There's one bit that I'm not going to be able to get to in the 1 o'clock hour. I just know I won't because there's so much to get to. But there's something I wanted to get to real quickly here just to throw it out there. Florida State said a lot of things yesterday with the Florida State, one of their leaders basically saying, yeah, we're going to leave the ACC as soon as we can. Of just, we're here while we don't have the money to leave, but eventually we're out. Like, it is not an if, it's a when, which is so terrible. Again, so terrible. I hate all of this. But that falls in line with this report. This is from the scoop comes from even Novi Williams. He's a sports business reporter with Sportico. That reportedly Florida State is working with financial institution J.P. Morgan to raise institutional money for the Florida State Seminoles athletic department. They're going to the bank to get a loan to leave the ACC. Feels aggressive, feels unnecessary, but also Florida State, apparently, that's what they want to do. This all stinks. This all is horrible. But just so we all are very aware, this doesn't stop with the Pac-12 and what's happening inside the Pac-12 and the fact that that conference is essentially not going to exist after this season. The fact that this is probably going to be the swan song for the Pac-12. The ACC and some of those teams are next. College football is changing for forever, and I really hate it. We're going to take a timeout for an ag update. When we come back, we're going to hear from head coach Andy Reid and running back Clyde Edwards-Helaire from Chiefs training camp. Welcome back into Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster here with you. Thank you for joining me on this lovely Friday afternoon. Real quick, just because I want to throw it in here while we have a moment before we get to the Kansas City Chiefs. The Royals have a Barlow again. The Kansas City Royals just announced they have claimed right-handed pitcher Joe Barlow from the Texas Rangers and optioned him to AAA Omaha. Their 40-man roster now sits at 39. They lasted, oh boy, let's see. So it was two full days without a Barlow. They now have another. I want to make this clear. There is no relation, as far as I can find, of this Joe Barlow with our old friend Scott Barlow. Joe Barlow, for what it is worth, has a career ERA of 3.05 and 73 and 2/3 innings. Relies heavily on a slider with a about roughly 93-mile-an-hour fastball. Has about 7.5 Ks per 9, so a little bit of strikeout, swing and miss stuff, not too high. Had a 4.66 ERA in 13 games for the Rangers this season in 9 and 2/3 innings. Also has not walked a ton as well. So that's just a very tiny Kansas City Royals update. Just another opportunity to take a flyer on a player and see what they can do, which is what the Royals should be doing. This one, though, being, of course, a Barlow, is very funny. They have filled their Barlow quota. And that is your Kansas City Royals update. We'll have more at the bottom of the 1 o'clock hour. But Chiefs training camp was here today yet again. Even more action from out in St. Joe. It is family day tomorrow for the Chiefs at training camp. So it'll be even crazier, even more a little wild for the Chiefs at their training camp facility in St. Joe. A lot of injuries today. That seemed to have been kind of the most consistent thing we were seeing, is more than a few players sat out, more than a few players did not participate in practice today. The main ones, and we're from head coach Andy Reid in a moment. Mike Dana did not practice today due to a calf. Jordy Fortson still with a shoulder injury. Charles Omenihu didn't practice with his calf injury. Ladarius Sneed missed another day with his knee injury. Reese Taylor, a corner with a hamstring injury. Of course, Kadarius Toney in his knee. And then Jalen Watson missed practice today. Non-injury related. He is A-OK, and he was excused. So it was known that he would miss practice today. He was excused by the staff. So nothing negative about just like a guy leaving and not showing up or whatever. And I also wanted to touch on this real quickly. This didn't, I don't know, Dan and I have touched on some of the stuff a little bit yesterday, but, with the Royals, things get missed. There's an open spot now on the 53 that is going to exist because Najee Johnson is going to be on IR for this season and miss this year with the torn ACL. That's happening. That's a major bummer. But also, that 100% means there's a 53-man spot open because Najee was going to have one. A name that I think a lot of you will be happy about that has been name dropped by Steve Spagnuolo, Echo Boydo, the former K-State product. He's been looking real good in camp. We'll see how the next few weeks go, but he looked good again today. He ran with the ones today as well on the outside, along with rookie cornerback Nick Jones, made some runs today. As I always say, don't make too much out of just coming in a little bit and some of those different things. But Echo Boydo quietly could sneak in and maybe make it into the back end of this roster for the Chiefs if he does well enough for Spags on defense. Another way, if he shows himself as a capable special teamer for Dave Tobe, there's a chance that Echo Boydo could find his way to making this final Chiefs 53-man roster. But going to training camp here, Big Red. What did head coach Andy Reid have to say while speaking at training camp earlier today?
We have all the politicians that are here, and I'm talking. There's something wrong here. All right. So listen, there's really nothing new on the injuries other than Tranquil practice today. Turk continued to rehab. Same guys that were hurt before are the same guys that are on the list. Listen, it was good work today. Today was a red zone day, a little bit shorter field, but the guys kept the intensity level up. I thought they did a nice job of competing. Defense is creating these small windows down in there, which it's tough shooting, which we appreciate. I mean, it's good work for the offense. It's also good for the team. So, anyways, with that, time's yours.
Gabbert talked yesterday about how much he's enjoyed this camp and learning the new offense and playing for you. What have you seen from him that he brings to the table as a backup quarterback?
Yeah, well, he's got that experience. He's seen the league for 13 some years, whatever it is, and he's got a pretty good feel on things. There's not too much that he hasn't seen from a defensive standpoint presented to him. And likewise in the offense, he's got a little familiarity with the offense, but just learning and staying on top of that becomes important. Hey, come here. Huh? Come here. So it's how you doing? Huh? All right. So anyways, that's what I've seen. Yeah, personal reasons. He was gone. Yeah.
So he was excused.
He was excused. Yeah.
Coach, can you tell much about a receiving core? We all want to know how they're going to play. Can you tell a lot about them until they get into an actual game?
Well, you want to add that to it. The thing you're looking for here is a retention of all the plays, opportunity to catch the ball in tight quarters, contested throws, and so that you can get that part out of it. But you got to see the game, see what happens.
Coach, how do you like the job so far? Echo Boydo trying to push it around.
Yeah, you know what? He's doing a nice job. He's really doing a nice job. So we'll see how he did today, but he's been getting better every day. Challenging. Told me he's got to eat a little bit. He's kind of thin, but he's a heck of a competitor, and he's got good skill.
Well, you said you like when the offense does well certain times, defense the other. That's a good camp. How did you like the back and forth today, especially?
Yeah, I thought it was good. I thought it was a good challenge all the way around. I thought the defense did a nice job of protecting the end zone, and I just thought it was a good day. Yeah, good day.
Andy, how do you feel about Clyde's camp so far and how he fits into the mix?
Yeah, I like what he's doing. He's practicing hard, aggressive. He's doing a nice job. You can tell he had experience and all that.
Coach, we've got a lot of rain at camp this year. How can days like this prepare your guys for the season, though? It's a little bit rainy outside.
Yeah, so as long as there's not lightning, it's all good. We'll come out and work, and somewhere that'll pay off for you down the road. Just footing, grasping the football, catching the football. I mean, all those things, both sides of the ball and special teams. So we've had a little bit of rain. It's good for the farmers.
That is what head coach Andy Reid had to say earlier today at training camp, because I find this adorable, and there's no other reason to bring this up other than a fact found adorable. You heard moments there of Andy Reid talking to somebody in a very childish voice. Andy Reid's grandkids were at training camp today, and that is adorable and fantastic. They were very random shots. They were wearing Chiefs jerseys that had Reid on the back, which is just fantastic. No, it's cool. Big Red rules, and he is such a. I put it this way because this is why I think it's worth like having a small to bring it up. You never get a glimpse into Andy Reid, the dude. You get it so rarely. And I make jokes about, he doesn't talk a ton at the podium sometimes. He never lets you in deep on what he's thinking. He can be very, not like cagey, but he's very, reserved in his answers and very calculated. It's always nice when we get the personality of Andy Reid. It's like when he did that State Farm commercial with Patrick Mahomes. It was nice to see Andy Reid's personality. Andy Reid, the grandpa, is hilarious and fantastic, and I have to imagine he is probably the best grandpa to those kids, especially if they want cheeseburgers. If they want cheeseburgers, Andy Reid's getting them. Yes, that's my only cheeseburger joke I'll make about Andy Reid because I think those are like very far too common now. But still, beyond that, on the actual football portion of today, Red Zone Day is always so fascinating because, you're doing your red zone installs. And that's an area the Chiefs more defensively than offensively have often struggled. But and last year this was different because last year the Chiefs were really efficient offensively in the red zone and did a good job finishing off drives. Patrick Mahomes had a lot of touchdown passes that were, like less than 5 yards and really short. And so the Chiefs, that is the mark of the Chiefs being efficient in the red zone. But at the same time, there's still some strides to be made there. There's still been plenty of times where the Chiefs have had issues with some of the, and the biggest thing with the red zone is what I'll say to this is the space is so much tighter. And I think that's the most important thing when it comes to the red zone is the space is tight. You only got, you get down to the 20, you're 20 in the goal line, and then every inch you get closer down to that goal line, there's less space to operate. And for the Chiefs, on the one hand, with Andy Reid scheming, it's totally fine. On the other, this can be a team offensively that loves to use and move their players around and use motion in the way they move through the windows to be how they succeed. Well, when you get into a tight space, that can get more difficult. So Red Zone Day is always fascinating to me. I love to hear what it's like at Red Zone Day and some of those things when they're working on the Red Zone installs because it can be such an important day as well. Like head coach Reid said, not a lot of injury updates. Drew Tranquil, of course, did practice today. I reviewed the injuries before. And, of course, Jalen Watson was excused as well. So no big, massive updates for the Chiefs at training camp from head coach Andy Reid today. But overall, sometimes no news is good news for certain situations. Also wanted to hear from Clyde Edwards-Helaire. CEH spoke today, likely to be running back 4? And as I've said, I think by the end of training camp, he's off this roster. I think he's traded. I think they're going to showcase him in the preseason, and somebody's going to want him. I really do, with the fact that everyone needs to bulk up the running back rooms, the running back committee at some point. But even with all that being around, Clyde, very open, very honest, and very understanding of where he's at in his NFL career here early on and what's been going on. But Clyde spoke for nearly 7 minutes today, which is a lot for a guy with what his role is supposed to be, but it just speaks to how much Clyde is willing to answer any and all questions and let you know who he is. So here's what Clyde Edwards-Helaire had to say at training camp earlier today.
Clyde, I was going to say, just general camp evaluation of yourself and how things been going for you.
I say it's been going pretty well. Been here a couple weeks. Whatever I've been asked to do, I've been doing it, and it's been going pretty smooth for me.
Mindset into this camp and through this camp compared to years past in terms of your status?
What you mean as far as status? Just playing?
What do you feel you need to establish?
Man, I'm like it's been every year. It's been whenever my number's called, I know I'll be there to, do my job and do what I need to do as far as being on the field as a running back. Never really been a question on, what I can't, what's going on, but it's been whenever my number's called, I just go. So
how have the last few years kind of shaped you to where you are now, mentally, physically? Like, what do the last few years mean to your career now?
Man, being able to become a Super Bowl champion, won a championship on every level. So as far as mentally, I would say kind of getting the ins and outs of the NFL, knowing, what's real, what's not, knowing, what's kind of not necessarily foreshadowing, but you can kind of see what, plans goes on for you when you have years in and out as far as the league. It's not like going in blind as far as being a rookie or coming in and then just on in my stand case, like I came in a year it was COVID, so for 2 years it was kind of 2 years of nothing, just really trying to get acclimated to the things going into year 2. So I'll say it's been a learning process, but other than that, it's been more of a maturing process and being older. I mean, I'm just turned 21 when I first got in the league, so 24 now.
Takeaway now from long drive periods where you are in your career versus when you were first trying to get adjusted to the fact that it's unusual compared to maybe.
You saying like the long drive drill that we do out here? Honestly, man, I would say it's really rep count across the board. I feel like it was a little different when EB was here. You have guys probably going. I remember going 6-7 reps straight, and I remember my rookie year having a long drive drill when I went 23. So I mean, it's not. I never really look at it as it's something that's like punishment. I know like I got to go out there and whatever my numbers on the play, like I go out there and run it. So I don't typically look at it as long drive drill is something that's challenging. I mean, shit, if a drive on the field is 23 plays and you got to go out there and do it. So I don't really think about it like that. I just kind of put the pads on and roll.
Like you had some solid one-on-one pass pro reps today. How far do you think you've come in pass protection at this point?
As far as in what standpoint, like physically or identifying or just – I mean, it's been 4 years of actually being able to block NFL guys. LSU was a great school as far as transitional, and I remember being able, having Devin White, Donnie Alexander, having guys like that, having one-on-one pass rush with them. But it's just more of somewhat a little attention to detail, a little bit more, and not only that, it's you kind of look at things and get pinpointed from other players on the field. So you'll have, guys like Jet, who's been in the league, 10, 11 years. You can kind of pick things off of him, kind of figure out what he was thinking about some things. And then if not, like I still, like to this day, I still call Kevin Falk and send some stuff to him and try to get some feedback off him. So that's just what it is.
Did you do anything different in the offseason to try to prepare yourself physically? Now that you're
I mean, this offseason, I really was trying to figure out what my role would be. Typically, it's more if you kind of ask beforehand, like what would be my, whatever's going into the next season. I remember one time it was more catching and running more routes out the backfield just because that's what I was told before going into the offseason. So this offseason, it was just general, just workouts, honestly. Doing my running back things, doing the things that I feel like was as far as my building blocks when I first came into the league, just not really specifying anything because at the end of the day, I know I could catch out the backfield. I could catch from the receiving standpoint. I can run the ball in between the tackles, even if like the short goal line drills and everything we had here, like I think I scored like 4 times just in the span of the things that we had. So it's not necessarily kind of pinpointing and funneling to do one thing, but I just kind of did an overall broad, the running back position of what everybody feels that it is. But I wouldn't necessarily say I'm in that span of just only doing one thing. I do it all.
You weren't told anything specific about your role or
no. What do you think your role should be, or what do you envision?
It's not my space to kind of say. It's really, man, whatever. Like I say, whenever they give me a number, they call my number. It doesn't matter. Like I say, I run between the tackles. I catch out the backfield even beforehand. Like going to the Super Bowl, that whole week I practice receiver. So I can't sit here and tell you what I exactly feel, what my role should be, but I know I can do whatever on the field.
Last 2.
Bob, when you're in camp, where do you feel like you can gain Andy's trust the most?
I would say mainly in the building. And I to myself, I feel like I tested at the most. He asked me to play receiver for Super Bowl week to keep the timing up for the first team reps. So like if I can have a running back go out here and we don't miss a beat as far as being able to play the X, the Z, the zebra. I mean, I feel like that's kind of where the trust should be. I can have my guy go in any position, and that's he preaches it all the time, being interchangeable as a player, not being able to just be one-dimensional. So I was cool with it.
Just a preseason game, but you'll be back in Louisiana and back in the Superdome in about a week. Just how special was it for you to go back there?
I'm excited, man. Already got doctors, everybody telling like 30 tickets was already bought from the little softball team that I kind of go and check on them each summer. My dad, my whole family, like it's the whole nine. Every time I'm in the Superdome, it's been something, you know, to be relived for me. So like I won a national championship there, won a high school championship there. It's being in the Superdome, being in New Orleans, and being in Louisiana has always been special for me. So it's perfect.
As Clyde Edwards-Helaire speaking after training camp earlier today, it's just always, I know I've said this a ton, and so you're probably tired of hearing it, but it is refreshing because he understands where he is. And he came into the league at a different time. Of course, Clyde had to come in during COVID and some of those things and where he was with that. And it's understanding what his role is and ever evolving what that role is. And more importantly, him being willing to understand that he'll just take whatever role is being given while he's with the Chiefs. You know, Jake and I talked about it when we heard from Clyde. It was earlier this offseason in regard to during the Super Bowl, what it was like. And Clyde could have played. He could have been active. Ended up being essentially a healthy scratch for the Super Bowl. He spent the Super Bowl week working on scout team and helping the team prepare, but knowing he wasn't going to get to play. And one of the biggest gains of his life. And that opportunity because, he'd only gotten to play in one other Super Bowl, which was the second one under Patrick Mahomes where the Chiefs lost to Tampa Bay. He got to, be at least around during that time, but he didn't get a chance to play in this one against Philadelphia and be a part of that win against the Eagles. And he understood that. And even more so goes forward. He talks about, speaking to old coaches and old guys and keeping contact and knowing what he needs to do in the league and what he needs to do going forward. Whatever Sky does going forward, whatever that is, whatever team that is with, because like I've said many times, I don't believe that his future is on this team. I hope he succeeds because I think there's something there. He isn't what the Chiefs thought he was, and he isn't what I thought he was going to be out of LSU as well. Because I loved Clyde at LSU when he won the national title with Joe Burrow, and his skill set, especially as a receiver, looked so tantalizing for what the Chiefs were trying to do and what they could have done. And it just never materialized with health and other things. It never materialized. Now you have Isaiah Pacheco. Now you have Deneric Prince. Has been looking good. Jarrett McKinnon is the savvy vet. There's just not room for Clyde Edwards-Helaire and what he could bring to this team. So hope wherever he goes next, whatever that next stop is for him in his NFL journey, because I think he will get at least one more stop somewhere around the league. I hope he can be successful. I hope he can find a way to make that next spot his own and figure out what he wants to do. But overall, always good to hear from Clyde, see what he's going to do, and seeing what happened at training camp today. That'll do it for the noon hour of Mic'd Up. Coming up in the 1 o'clock hour, we're going to look at realignment and hear from David Lesky. Time for hour number 2 of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster here with you, riding solo this afternoon. Thank you all for joining me as we wrap up yet another week here on 580 WIBW, our first week of the month of August. Not the full week of August because Monday was the 31st, but you get my point. Next week's the first full week in August, but you all understand me. We were so close. Thank you so much for being here this afternoon. Coming up in the 1 o'clock hour of the show today, more college realignment, which is terrible for the heart and soul of athletics. But Oregon and Washington, they're moving on. Arizona, they're moving on. Arizona State and Utah, where are they expected to go? What happens to the 4 other members of the Pac-12? The Pac-12 is about to cease to exist, and we're going to break all that down here coming up in the 1 o'clock hour of the show. Bottom of the hour, David Lesky of Inside the Crown is going to join me to chat about the red-hot 6-game-in-a-row winning Kansas City Royals. I will never get tired of saying that, not once, not ever. Then everyone loves a list today in honor of college realignment. What schools are we most excited to see compete in their new conference? That's because they're going to be competitive, but it's because they're going to be so bad. We're taking the heart out of it. We're taking the heart out of how much it stinks. It stinks that this is all happening. What schools are we just excited to see compete? in their new conferences because there's a lot of teams and a lot of new places. Mainly, it's just 2 different conferences, but a lot of teams switching around those new conferences. We'll take a look at that for Everyone Loves a List today. And then, of course, coming up at the 2 o'clock hour, Jesse Newell, the Kansas City Star, is going to join me to chat all things Chiefs. As always, you can join in on the show on our text line, 785-272-9429 is that text line number. You can also jump into the comment section of our YouTube live stream. We're live on YouTube today. We were live yesterday. We'll be live Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday. We are live every day of the week that we have a show. On YouTube.com, Sports1580 is that YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't. We would appreciate it. As now that we're past 300, 400 is the next goal. I'm making 400 the next goal. Can we get, and how quickly can we get to 400 subscribers to our YouTube channel? We appreciate every single one of you, every one of the 300 plus so far who have subscribed to our YouTube channel. But where we begin today is a sad song must be played. The Pac-12, as we know it, is about to cease to exist. There was, and I'm going to try and, it's been a wild morning. I want to try and recap what happened. So late last night, reports came out that there had been a lot of steam lost in the conversation for Oregon and Washington to join the Big Ten. There had been steam lost, and then that was followed up by a report that the Pac-12 leaders, the movers, the shakers, the presidents more than anything, but those in charge of making decisions for the athletic departments were going to meet this morning, be presented a more firm deal on the Apple Media deal for the Pac-12, and that they were going to sign a grant of rights, that the 9 remaining schools were going to sign a grant of rights. No one else was leaving. They were going to hold firm. They might have added 1 or 2 more teams. I guess actually 1 or 3. Everyone wants to be an even number. But they would be firm. No one else is leaving. Everyone would hold, and the Pac-12 would patch itself together. That was the belief till about 11:30. Actually, till about more like 11, when then reports came flooding out that no deal has been signed, no deal will be signed, and then the reports that Oregon and Washington were going to start exploring the financial ability to move to the Big Ten, and if it was financially feasible, they were gone. They were leaving. Well, at 11:40 this morning, it came out officially, this is for Brett McMurphy of the Action Network, friend of the program, that Oregon and Washington are officially joining the Big Ten. They're gone. The Huskies and the Ducks, they're going to the Big Ten, which means the Pac-12 is down to 5. Sorry, down to 7. Yeah, 7. 7's that number. I'm bad at math. They're down to 7, which is bad. And then quickly following that came reports that have been firmed up since last night. Arizona has been officially offered an invitation to the Big 12, and they are expected to accept. Boom, we're down to 6. Reports have also come out that if Arizona leaves, Arizona State, because their border regions want the schools to go together, that Arizona State is going to go. Even more reports that come out, again, per Brett McMurphy of the Action Network, that Arizona State and Utah are showing interest in the Big 12. And the Big 12 is exploring its options now that Oregon and Washington are going to leave for the Big 10. So if you're counting at home with me, if Arizona State and Utah also leave, we're down to 4. Cal, Stanford, Oregon State, Washington State. That's all that's left. The rest are gone. Colorado, gone. Big 12. Arizona, Big 12. Arizona State, Big 12. Utah, Big 12. Get them to 16. UCLA, Big 10. USC, Big 10. Oregon, Big 10. Washington, Big 10. Gonzo. That leaves the Pac-12 with 4 members. And the fact of the matter is, you can't keep a conference together with 4 teams. I don't know what those 4 teams do. That is, in a nutshell, where we're at. Oregon and Washington, they're officially going to be in the Big 12. And I don't know what they do. I don't know what the Pac-12 does. And I don't want to make this clear before we really go into trying to break down what this is going to look for the future of college athletics. I just got to say this one more time. From the standpoint of if you love college football specifically, but if you just love college sports, this is a dark day. In some shape or form, the Pac-12, in its other iterations and other varieties, but as a thing, the Pac-12 is over 100-plus year history. I mean, the Rose Bowl is Pac-12 born and bred, amongst other things. I know we can get complicated with some of that, but, that is what it is. That's where we're at. And the fact of the matter is that it's done. It's not going to survive this. A very tradition-rich environment is gone. I don't know when we'll, officially know what is the last day of the Pac-12, but more likely than not, this is about to be the last season of Pac-12 as a conference ever. And it stinks. It sucks. I wish I could give you guys like more, higher level words or a fancier way to put this, but I don't. I have nothing else. It just sucks. I think some of the new sports are going to be cool. Some of the new matchups will be nice. Some Big 12 schools getting to play. Colorado against awesome. Arizona, KU, and basketball, that's going to be cool as hell. KU Arizona is going to be a conference matchup nearly every year. Not every year, because there are going to be some rotating parts to this schedule. But we're going to get Arizona and KU as a conference game. There's probably going to be plenty of Big 12 championship games played between KU and Arizona on the hardwood. That's cool. Utah and BYU will turn into a Big 12 rivalry game. That'll be a staple. That'll be a fun weekend every year. K-State, Colorado's back. Arizona State, what do they do with their partying atmosphere in the Big 12? There are some legitimately cool and exciting things to like about what's happening. But it all has to come through the fact of the Pac-12 is gone. And I think beyond knowing that now Oregon and Washington are going to go to the Big 10, beyond Arizona coming to the Big 12, and pretty confidently I can say I think Arizona State and Utah are going to follow. I am now very curious at what happens to Cal, to Stanford, to Oregon State and Washington State. And that's where I want to spend some time theorizing for a moment. There was, and this report happened one time, I honestly, be honest with you, don't know if I could ever find it again, that, and we'll see if it comes up more and resurfaces, that the Big Ten apparently considered adding Cal and Stanford along with Oregon and Washington to get them to 20. Now, Cal and Stanford on the field, I don't know how well they fit into the Big Ten competitively. Stanford in their heyday, sure. Stanford was a really good football team, a good football program. Cal's never really been that. At times, maybe, but overall, not really. They fit academically. Academically, with what the Big Ten tries to do and what they've tried to cultivate, Stanford and Cal are perfect fits. Outside of them being West Coast based, high-level academic institutions and West Coast Ivies, essentially, they're joining the Midwest Ivies if they join. So I wouldn't be surprised if that life raft gets extended, because while I don't know how much they add in certain levels, they are schools that fit with what the Big Ten wants to do. But that, to me, is the only life raft that could be sent to Cal and Stanford. They could both go independent. I think Stanford could be the best to survive as an independent. They have their academic funding. They have all that. They have their donors and everything like that. They could cut some deals and get themselves some exposure. I don't know what Cal does if they go independent. I don't know what Cal does. They might have the money. They might have a donor base that'll help. I don't know how Cal gets exposure if not through a conference deal. What entity is saying we're just going to pay to make sure we can air Cal athletic events? That football team hasn't been good in a minute. That basketball team was horrendous last year. Their other sports are fine, but not great. I don't know. I don't know what their future is or what their future holds, but I will be fascinated to see what they create and what they do. going forward. Because what they figure out and what they want to try and do is just, I don't know. And then we get to Oregon and Washington State and what they end up doing. And to try and essentially ponder for the moment, I really don't know what their lifeline is. More than likely, their lifeline for Oregon State and Washington State is the Mountain West. And on the one hand, it's kind of a bummer. But on the other, what does that look like? Does the Mountain West retain being the Mountain West? Do they try and basically rebrand under a new Pac-12 banner? You technically could. I mean, those would technically probably be the teams that are last left as the Pac-12 would be Oregon State and Washington State. If you join the Mountain West, does the Mountain West accept that its brand kind of goes away and they just all accept being Pac-12 schools? I don't know. I'm very curious about what it is. And that might be my most curious point to this all, because I know what's going to happen in the Big Ten. The Big Ten is basically settled. It's scoring against Washington. At most, they'll add Cal and Stanford, and then they're done. They're probably going to sit at 20. They'll be fine. So at the highest they'll go is they'll add those two. If not, they're fine at 18. That is what it is. That part's kind of set. I know Arizona is coming to the Big 12. I feel pretty confident that Arizona State's going to follow because the board of regents for those schools want those two schools to CA together. Michael Crow, we talked about him a little bit yesterday, higher up in Arizona State. He's Pac-12 through and through. He's Pac-12, bleeds till he dies. He isn't going to hold this up. They'll come to the Big 12 because they'll get him to get on board. And then Utah, for all their kicking and their screaming, they'll commit. So, it does. It just comes down to those four mini Pac-12 schools. What do they do? And more importantly, what does this final year of the Pac-12 look like? I think we should celebrate this final year of the Pac-12. Because I think by, halfway through the football season, we'll know where everyone's new destinations are. We'll know who's going where, who's doing what. And we'll see what it is. And we'll see what it does. And I don't know what it's going to be, but it's a sad day for the Pac-12 because they're basically done. But we kind of knew this was coming. And it sucks that greed is killing all this. And that's what you got to remember. This isn't about the Big 12 killing the Pac-12. This isn't even fully the Big 10 killing the Pac-12. Greed killed the Pac-12. Because everyone just needed all this money in the world. And to get there, to get there, we had to destroy one of the institutional pillars of college athletics. It stinks, but that's where we are. Before we wrap up this segment, I want to get to a comment by our good friend Vance on the YouTube comments. Is there a possibility that new sports will be introduced to the Big 12 with the new schools that will be bringing them? I don't know. I don't think so. But for fun, I'll see how quickly I can do all this. I'm going to see. We're going to use Arizona because I know Colorado has some interesting stuff. I know Colorado has an alpine skiing team. You're not going to get those things with some of these Big 12 schools. But Arizona, what do we got here? Arizona athletics. Anything new? Arizona's got beach volleyball. I don't know if the Big 12 would add beach volleyball, but maybe. Outside of that, it's all pretty run of the mill. Arizona has triathlon. Folks, Arizona has triathlon. That's cool. I'm not playing what random sports does insert school here have. And then Arizona, that's on the men's side and the women's side, I guess. Yes, that's for men's and women's. That's all their men's and women's sports. So, could you add beach volleyball or triathlon? I don't know. Vance, that's a very good question, a very interesting question for what it could potentially be. But overall, I don't know. Maybe the Big 12 thinks about adding some new sports. Maybe that's something that changes it up a little bit. But overall, I don't know how much that changes with what sports will be offered. I also still have the belief, and Jay has talked about this, that I think football gets their own conference set up and the other sports might start getting their own conference setups, which I think would be the best thing is in this massive shuffling we're doing. Let's let football have their weird conferences, basketball have their weird conferences. Let's let the Olympic sports get regionalized conferences. Like, let's get, you know, some regionalized Olympic sports because for their travel systems, it works best. I don't know if we'll ever get to that point, but I think it could go that well. Who knows? It'll be interesting no matter what. We're going to take a timeout here on Mike Dip. When we come back, it's time for Everyone Loves a List. For Everyone Loves a List here on Mic'd Up with Jake and Fulton, except it's mainly Fulton Caster today with Jake LeBon having the day off. For the list today, in honor of, well, I guess in part due to contrary alignment, I don't really know if I want to say in honor of teams we are most interested to see compete in the new conference athletically. Just what is their sport? Probably more college football than anything else, but other sports are okay too. Just who you're excited to see compete on their new conferences. And with that, I bring in from 580 Sports Talk, Dan Lucero. Tell me about the list today with Jake being gone. Dan, thanks for joining.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Who is your number 4 team you're most excited to see compete in their new conference?
Number 4, I'm going to go with Houston in the Big 12. I think that's a sleeping giant of a program. A lot of want-to there. I think they're going to be really, really good in football. Obviously, they're having a moment in basketball right now. I'll say Houston in the Big 12 for number 4 for me.
That's a good honorable mention for me. I just, until they bring in some more competent staff, I don't know how much Houston can do for certain things. Number 4 for me, USC in the Big 10. USC at times can compete, at times they can't. How do they look against that style of football they play out there, plus with the travel? I'm intrigued at what USC under Lincoln Riley can look like in a new conference.
Actually, I have USC, the Big Ten, as my number 3. Yeah, they were the dominant football brand for a long time there in the Pac-12. Kind of had lost their grip on that. We're starting to get their grip back before now moving to the Big Ten. Yeah, how do they stand up? Can they recruit? Can they build teams that match up to what Ohio State and Michigan have built at the top of that league?
Number 3 for me, one of the newest teams to the Big Ten, Oregon. What do they look like? They start kind of making this new push. What do they look like? Trying to recruit into kind of a different area, moving into a different space with some of these bigger teams. Definitely a change of place from the Pac-12. So what does Oregon look like in the Big Ten?
Number 2 for me is going to be UCLA in the Big Ten, not just because they're an even bigger mystery, I think, than USC.
Yeah.
As far as how competitive are they going to be football wise, basketball wise, in that brand new league. They sleeping giant of a program there, I think. So fascinated by them.
Number 2 for me, BYU in the Big 12. I really like BYU and what they can do. I want to see what they look like against consistent, higher level competition and what that looks like. So BYU in the Big 12 for me.
Number 1, Colorado in the Big 12 for sentimental reasons for me. Obviously, having grown up there and remember Colorado in the Big 8, the old Big 12. Happy to see them back where they belong.
It truly is back where they truly do belong. Number 1 for me, UCF in the Big 12. I really am fascinated. I think that either goes tremendously well and they start really competing, or it goes tremendously bad. I don't think there's an in-between, so I'm so excited to see what UCF does in the Big 12. That is our list today. Dan, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure.
We'll take a timeout. When we come back, David Lesky will join me from Inside the Crown. Welcome back into Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster here with you, riding solo. Jake, having the day off. He'll be back on Monday for the program as we roll into next week. But right now, without any further ado, the red-hot Kansas City Royals are back to being our topic of conversation. And with that, I bring in our good friend David Lesky of Inside the Crown. David publishes a fantastic newsletter called Inside the Crown. Just Google it. You'll find it on Substack. I recommend it. It'll pop in your inbox every day. It's some great stuff and great content from Dave. And Dave, my first question for you, and I promise this is rooted in reality, nothing crazy, nothing, hyperbolic. I just have to ask. Do the Royals get the number 6 seed or 7 seed in the playoffs this year?
Well, there's only 6 seeds.
That's a fair
so
point.
Probably the 7th. So probably the 7th. No, no. There are really 2 paths for the Royals, and I think that's going to be the first one, which is the 3rd seed, because division winners doesn't seed by record. So when they win the division with an 87-75 record, because they're not going to lose again, they'll be the 3rd seed, and they'll face I don't know. We'll see. That's the mystery, is who they're going to host for 3 games in the first round of the playoffs.
That really is the biggest mystery, because we both know the Royals are not going to lose a single bit. Right now, it's worth noting, and entirely of all this very fun joking we're doing here, just because I have this in front of me, the 3rd seed in the American League right now, if my computer there is cooperating, they would face the 6th seed if they were the 3rd, and the 6th seed right now is the Toronto Blue Jays.
Yeah, they Royals beat them in Kansas City, which is where they'd host them for the first round. They beat them one out of 4 games earlier this year. So
they did.
It's all set. World Series run, here we come.
World Series run, here we come. All joking aside here, Dave, this winning streak, I mean, we both kind of agreed at some point they'd win 3 in a row. It's really hard to go an entire year without winning 3 in a row. They would do that at some point. But 6 in a row feels kind of crazy given where their team was. And the first place I want to start looking at with this winning streak, everyone's going to see the runs they scored in this series against the Twins and against the Mets. The 9 runs yesterday were amazing. They scored, I believe it was 40 runs over this 6-game stretch. That is what's going to catch everyone's attention. But the starting pitching over this stretch has been so amazing and so incredible. What have you seen on the mound from the Royals in this 6-game winning streak that maybe you would look at and go, that's kind of the highlight that kind of shows why starting pitching's been so big for them over the 6-game winning streak?
I mean, the biggest thing for me is they're not walking guys. I don't remember the number over the winning streak, but since the break, they have a 5.1% walk rate among their starters, which that's really, really good anyway, right? I mean, I think it's the second best in baseball since the break. I think the Rays are the only. Oh no, there's 2 teams lower: the Giants and the Rays, who are pitching factories, right? I mean, both of them. They've got a lower walk rate. But when you look at the first half, which I hate that we call it halves. That's a pet peeve of mine, but it is what it is. The Royals starting pitching had a walk rate of 8.1%. So small sample, obviously. More games in the first half than the second half. Anyway, more games. Obviously, they played in the first half, and they've only played 20 or whatever it is, 19 in the second half. But that walk rate has dropped 3%. That's huge. Now, some of that is Ryan Yarbrough, who is gone. But a lot of it, like Brady Zinger, 8 innings, no walks yesterday. Cole Reagan, 6 innings, 1 walk on Wednesday, would have been? Yeah, Wednesday. Tuesday night, was that Greinke? He didn't walk anybody in 5 innings. They are just going out there and throwing strikes and making teams beat them, and they're not. They're just not beating them. So it's been really fun to watch them work and generally get pretty deep into games. And, I think that they're, it's good that we're talking about this now rather than, Monday probably or next week, because they go to Philly and then they go to Boston, not great places to pitch against 2 good offenses. So things may fall apart pretty quickly, but for now, they've been really impressive by throwing strikes.
For now, the vibes are truly immaculate. And yeah, the strike throwing, I think, is so huge and the low walk rate. I want to talk with the pitching of the 2 young guys who have been shining, Brady Singer and Cole Reagan. And let's start with Singer, who's had 2 starts in the 6-game winning streak. He's kind of, if the streak were to end tonight, which of course we know it won't, Jordan Lance versus Aaron Nola, ace versus ace in this matchup. But for Singer, combined in his 2 starts over this streak, 13 innings pitched, he's given up 7 total hits, 2 total runs, 14 total strikeouts. What have you seen of Brady Singer in that start against Minnesota to start the streak and his start yesterday against the Mets? Just what have you seen out of Brady Singer, who's really turned a corner as of late and is really starting to look like the guy we saw more of last year? Just what have you seen out of Singer and his 2 starts on this winning streak?
Yeah, the biggest thing for me, 2 things, I guess, are the biggest things. One, his sinker command is mostly back. And that actually is kind of the biggest thing, because it plays everything else up, because that sinker command, when he's throwing it right, makes his slider just dirty. I put a GIF in today's newsletter that it was Brett Beatty was batting. It was 2 strikes, and he swung and missed at a slider that was never a strike. And you watch that, and as a fan, you're like, well, why would he swing at that pitch? It was never a strike. The problem is when Singer's sinker, it's hard to say, when his sinker is working well, they tunnel so exceptionally well that they both start in the same spot. And so if you're Beatty and you look at, and you see this pitch coming in, you go, okay, if that's a sinker and I take it, it's strike 3. If it's a slider and I swing at it, it's strike 3. And so you got to say, okay, I think it's a sinker, and you have, a 10 billionth of a second or whatever it is to make that decision. Thinks it's a sinker, he swings and misses. And so the sinker sets everything else up, and with the command back, it makes it possible for that to work. And then with his changeup that he's made a pretty strong effort to throw over his last few starts, 9% or higher usage in 4 of the last 5. That plays off the sinker also, but it doesn't matter if the sinker's not working because and all he has is a slider that people know is probably going to be a ball. And so everything stems from that sinker, but also, again, using the changeup more, I think really helps teams stack the lineup against him when they can. I mean, the Twins had, 7 lefties, 8 lefties? It was a lot on last Friday night. The Mets had, I think, 6 yesterday. I might be off a little bit, but I mean, they had a few too. And so you've got to throw that changeup just to at least keep hitters honest. And, the sinker being able to locate that's made a big difference for him.
The other young starter who looked really great in this series against the Mets, Cole Reagan's got his second start as a Kansas City Royal. He had that good one against the Rays, 5 innings, 1 run, looked excellent, was throwing absolute gas with 99 and 98 was being shown. Less velocity in this start, but overall still good results. 6 innings, 7 hits, no runs, a career-high 8 strikeouts for Cole Reagan's en route to his first win as a Kansas City Royal. For him specifically, I want to talk about something that I believe you have noticed, that I noticed, that many smart people around this game have noticed. He added a new pitch in his time since his last start and coming up in this start this week for the Royals. And he added a slider, and he essentially just modified his cutter to be more of a slider. No, he apparently still throws both, whether that's intentional or unintentional, we'll see. On one hand, just in general, what do you see out of Reagan's? Do you think how much do you think the slider being added to his arsenal helps him? But then also to kind of make this a two-parter here, how much does it speak to you about the Royals pitching development staff that in about a month's worth of time, they were with his help to identify a pitch he could add, helped him add that pitch, and get him enough confidence to throw it in his arsenal? Just on those two fronts, what overall have you seen out of Reagan's that you saw out of his start? And then also on the pitching development side, that makes you, maybe if it does make you more interested to see what they do going forward?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest thing for me, the biggest thing is the organization was really quick with that, and then he picked it up fast. We all want the organization to be that quick, and they should be with everybody. They should be able to say, with all the technology that's out there, you should be able to look at a guy, see him pitch. I get you want to see him live, that's fine. See him pitch once, maybe twice, and say, okay, this is our plan. Not every pitcher can execute that plan quickly. You go back to Brady Singer. They've tried a few different changeups with him, and he has not felt comfortable with many of them, and that's part of why he hasn't thrown it. Now, I think there's some other issues there, but Cole Reagan's was open to a change. He took to it quickly, and it worked out really well for him. Now, maybe it's another pitch that's not – the slider is a modified cutter for him, so it really wasn't that difficult compared to adding an entirely new pitch. But even so, he took to it very, very quickly, and it's already a really good pitch. I wrote when he pitched against the Rays, he had 3 strikeouts in 5 innings and a ton of 2-strike foul balls. And I said, look, that was nice. The velocity was great. I think there's a future there, all this good stuff. But if you can't put a hitter away, you can't be more than a back of the rotation starter, which teams need, but you also want better. And he needed a pitch that he could put hitters away on, and he found it in like 2 weeks, really. I mean, I think they were talking about it before his start on July 15th, I would assume, but he found it very, very quickly. And I think about if you want to compare the Royals pitching development today to this time last year, they used to be very against this. It used to be, we're going to work on this in the off season, but during the season, let's hone the pitches that you do have. And the best organizations don't do that. They add where they can. I mean, I can't think of an example off the top of my head, but I know it's happened a few times that a pitcher's gone, yeah, I tried to grip in the bullpen and threw it in a game. Royals would have lost their you-know-what if a pitcher did that during a game. And so I think this says a lot about the overall change in the organization. And it makes me very optimistic for the pitching because of that, because guys don't develop just by being who they are. They develop by getting better. Excuse me. And I think that the showing Cole Reagan's him being able to show that he did it, I think says quite a bit about what they can do down there, and hopefully they can continue that with other guys too.
David Lesky is my guest here on Mic'd Up on our Filling in Place Wine and Spirits phone line. David Lesky is the publisher of the great Inside the Crown newsletter. Just Google, you'll find it on Substack. Subscribe. It is a great piece of content I've delivered into your inbox every time Dave creates a newsletter. You can also follow Dave on Twitter at DBLesky. Moving over to the offense, and on the offense, there's just one guy I think we have to talk about. Bobby Witt Jr. is rapidly ascending to his superstar potential. It is still a smaller sample size. He is still trying to figure some things out. We cannot say he is permanently going to be this, but he just had a homestand for the ages. He hit 556 on the homestand, 3 home runs, including a grand slam on a pitch that was on his fists, another home run that just looked good, and then a home run yesterday that I think we can both agree that it sounded like a cannon blast was going off his bat. Just in short, what are you seeing out of Bobby Witt Jr., not just on the homestand, but since this hot stretch that's been entering like 2 months old at this point? What do you think is the single biggest catalyst to where Bobby Witt Jr. has evolved into essentially a superstar for the Royals?
I mean, the biggest thing to me, he's not getting himself out. When he makes an out, he's getting himself out sometimes. Every hitter does. But when he's getting out, it's because the pitcher got him out, not because he got himself out. And when you are that talented, the only real thing that can stop you is yourself. And he's still not walking a ton, but he's also not chasing that much. He's making really good contact. I think that he has kind of unlocked the secret for himself, which maybe doesn't work for everybody, but it works for him right now. And I think that's the single biggest thing that he's done. It's really fun to watch because it felt like they kind of had him take a step back, and it went from, hey, let's work on getting that first pitch to hit and not going out of the zone on the first pitch of the at bat or 1-0 or whatever. And the power was just kind of gone for a little while. And I think it's because when you kind of rebuild your approach, you almost have to go back to square one and say, I'm going to do this first and then start adding things back in. It's like when you're trying to figure out what you're allergic to. You start to add these things back in, and eventually you're back up to your mostly full diet after you've figured out, okay, it's that's causing the problem. Well, he started adding things back in, and over the last 3 weeks to a month, the power's been back. And suddenly it went from, okay, he's got a pretty good average and double here and there, to, oh, he's knocking the ball around the park every single night and doing something with the bat every single night to help his team. And it's just really fun to watch right now.
It really is. It is a pleasure. It is a joy, and I'm personally loving every single minute of it. Last few questions here, and I have to get your opinion on these. We had a trade deadline. In the last couple times we've spoke.
Oh yeah,
we did, and the Royals did something that I think both trades were good, and I'll get your opinion on them here. Let's start with the Ryan Yarbrough trade. Devin Mann, Derlin Figueroa from the Dodgers for Ryan Yarbrough. What do you think of that trade? How do you like the return, and do you think the Royals did well?
I think they did great. Every trade has to be taken with the context of the actual players' exchange. And as well as Ryan Yarbrough pitched for the Royals, especially after he came back from the injury, he's still Ryan Yarbrough. I appreciate. It's really cool that he got back on the mound. Great stuff, all that. But to get back a potentially useful utility player, and I think Devin Mann has a chance. I think he has a chance to be a good enough starter on some teams, but really you are always looking to replace him. But he's a nice guy to have on the bench. I think there may be a little more ceiling than that, but that's a solid return. And then Derlin Figueroa, I think it's all upside with him. He's got power. He can move. I think it's funny he listed as a shortstop a lot, and he hasn't played there at all this year. So let's not say he's a shortstop. He's a corner outfielder, maybe a first baseman. But he's got the bat speed is really interesting. The swing is pretty. I think that there's a lot to like about him, and he's a lottery ticket in some ways. So, or in most ways. So he may never make it, but I think you got to shoot for those guys, and I really appreciate getting somebody who could help soon in Mann, and somebody who is kind of a little farther off, but you can develop.
The other trade the Royals made, Scott Barlow is to the San Diego Padres. The Padres now host the two players with the wildest hair among pitching staffs in Josh Hader and Scott Barlow. You get back Henry Williams and you get back Jesus Rios. Jesus Rios is kind of that lottery ticket, whatever piece there. Hopefully it turns into something, but who really knows? Henry Williams might be the one player the Royals got back that fascinates me the most because of the potential upside. What do you think about Henry Williams in the little bit you've been able to learn about him since being acquired by the Royals? And what do you think of what he could bring to this team if he can unlock what his potential is?
Yeah, he's a risk because he's coming back from Tommy John. The velocity isn't back yet. And when he's right, when he's healthy, he was throwing upper 90s, mid 90s to upper 90s. So he's at 90, like I think I saw 91 to 93. I think he hit 94 a couple starts ago. So there's some risk there that maybe it never comes back. I haven't talked to anybody who's concerned about that yet. I think that there might be a point that you will, but at this point, a lot of guys do this coming back from Tommy John. So if he can get that velocity back with his slider and with the changeup that's developing, I think that there is, I don't know, 2 or 3 starter upside in there. And when you trade a closer who, let's see, a year and 2 months, he probably has, I don't know, 95 innings left of team control for a guy who could be at least a mid-rotation starter for 6 years, that's a really good deal. And I think, again, it's not without risk. You're not trading for, I don't know, Emmett Sheehan from the Dodgers, but you are trading for a guy who I think can be a really big piece in the rotation. And I think relatively quickly once he gets everything back. Now that said, again, it may not happen, but I like the risk there. I do.
My final question here for you, Dave, before I let you go. Royals start a series with the Phillies tonight. They're trying to stretch the win streak to 7. I'll put you on the spot. Does the win streak reach 7 tonight?
Okay. I don't want to, ruin anybody's cheering, but Jordan Lyles is pitching.
Versus
They're
Aaron
not legally allowed to win when Lyles pitches. They've broken the law twice this year. They're going to get caught if they keep doing it. So I don't think it continues, but hey, I've been wrong before.
We will definitely see. Dave, thank you so much for joining me, my friend. We'll chat with you next time. And hopefully the Royals maybe have even more good wins next time we chat.
That'd be great. Thanks, Fulton.
That is David Lesky of Inside the Crown. That'll do it for this hour of My Depth. Coming up in the 2 o'clock hour, Jesse Newell's going to join me to chat all things Chiefs. It is time for the final hour of Mic'd Up here on 580 WIBW. Fulton Caster here with you. Thank you so much for joining me this afternoon. I want to issue a big thank you, as always, to David Lesky for joining me at the bottom of last hour to chat all things Kansas City Royals, the red-hot Kansas City Royals, who have won 6 games in a row. We got a lot coming up for this hour of the program. We got On Second Thought, which is going to be an interesting one for this week. Royals and Phillies, their series. I'll drop you a little bit of a preview. The matchup game one tonight, Jordan Lyles and Aaron Nola. Battle of the Aces. There's no way Jordan Lyles puts together 2 back-to-back in a row good starts. Right. We're all agreeing on that. Okay, cool. But somehow, some way, the streak will reach 7 because it's very, very funny if it does so. And we'll also chat with Jesse Newell in just a moment here to discuss the latest news and notes from Chiefs training camp. As always, you can join in on the conversation on our text line, 785-272-9429. You can also hop in to our comment section of our YouTube live stream. We're live on YouTube every show. Go to youtube.com. Sports on 580 is that YouTube channel. Subscribe if you haven't. We would appreciate it. You can jump into the comment section of the show as well. Without further ado, we kick off this hour by bringing in our good friend, Jesse Newell of the Kansas City Star. Does some great work covering the Kansas City Chiefs out there at training camp. You can follow Jesse on Twitter at Jesse Newell on our Filling Place Wine and Spirits phone line. He now joins us. Jesse, how was training camp? Not just today, but the last few days with how wet and rainy it's been up there in St. Joe.
Yeah, I'm not one to be able to give a lot of context like the Adam Teichers of the world, here from ESPN where it's his 30-something training camp. I don't want to age him or anything, but it's only my second one, but this is definitely the rainiest one I've been to. There's been a lot of moisture here, obviously. The fans come up and try to watch, and so today's practice was delayed getting outdoors, but now it's kept it cool, which I think is a positive, at least for this whole thing, because as you know, this time of year, you don't really know what you're going to get with the weather. So a little bit of sprinkles, a little bit of rain, that's probably better than the alternative. So people at least staying cool here and the players as well. So I think we will pick that when it's all said and done.
I think so as well. For me, if I had to go to training camp and I had to choose between a little bit of, a little bit of rain, get a little wet versus it being like 105 with a real temp of 110, I know what I'm picking every single day of the week if I was one of those many fans who decided to go out there. Looking at training camp, especially with, today's, some of their news and notes, a lot of different players injured and missing some time with variety levels of injuries of any of the guys that have been practicing lately and all the different guys, from, I know he got back on the field today, but, Drew Tranquil's been hurt and Jody Fortson's been hurt. And we have, of course, Kadarius Toney's knee injury. And then Mike Dana has an injury and Charles Omeni with his calf. Out of any guy that's currently dinged up a little bit and missing some time, is there anyone in particular, I guess, outside of Kadarius Toney, because that's its own little thing, but of any of these other guys outside of Toney, is there anyone in particular you think is maybe impacted the most by missing some time here at training camp with whatever kind of dinged up injury they're dealing with right now?
Yeah, I think you mentioned the one, which would be Charles Omeni, who is new to this team. And right now, especially when Chris Jones is not out there because of his holdout, the defensive line gets really thin really quickly. We've seen Daniel Wise, who I covered in Kansas for multiple years on the KU beat. He's been in there with the ones for quite a bit of it. They've rotated other guys in there, whether it's, Malik Herring or Matt Dickerson. But on the defensive line, you're talking about, Omeni, who plays both inside and outside, gives them some versatility, whether it's early down, late down, but they they don't go too deep there. You know what I'm saying? Like the Chiefs get thin pretty quickly, especially when Chris Jones is on camp, and especially a guy who's new to this system, a guy who needs probably the additional reps to be in there. That's the one probably to keep your eye on to see if he's able to get back in there pretty soon. Again, nothing to be too worried about, and he's a veteran as well, so kind of knows how to keep himself in the right frame of mind. But that's the type of player where they're going to need him, because right now behind that, obviously George Karlaftis is in his second year. We did see Felix Anudike-Uzomah with the first team just for some flashes today in red zone. That's the first time all camp we've seen him with that. And I wrote a story last week about him where he was pretty frank, and Steve Spagnuolo was pretty frank, the defensive coordinator for the Chiefs, in saying that he's a little bit behind at this camp. He had a thumb injury that didn't allow him to go fully through the summer camp practices, and it set him back. And so Chiefs can use all the bodies they have right now on defensive line. So I'd say that's the one you're looking at. The other one is just L'Jarius Sneed. He has this knee injury. It's kind of on again, off again. He, sat out of practice, and then he sat out the last two. The big thing now is with Nazeez Johnson going down because of his season-ending injury. He tore his ACL last week in practice. Same thing. The Chiefs sort of get pretty light there quickly if he's not able to go. Today, there was even a moment when Echo Boydo, he made the Chiefs 90-man roster out of a rookie tryout camp, which almost never happens. He was in there with the first team. And so, again, for the Chiefs, you got Joshua Williams. Jalen Watson was out today with a personal thing, but they have a lot of cornerback bodies. But when you get down to it, and Jalen Watson's not available, and Nazeez Johnson's gone, and L'Jarius Sneed is out, all of a sudden you're kind of getting down to the back of the pecking order when it comes to cornerback. So I keep an eye on those two guys. Again, before the first preseason game, so nothing to worry about too much yet. But if this thing lingers on and on, then it will be something to monitor, especially with the depth at those two specific positions.
I think pointing out the depth of those two positions is such an important thing to note here, Jesse, because the defensive line starts to get thin at some point. Same thing with the backfield. Let's stay on those K-State guys for a minute, because in this little part of the state here, and a lot of our listeners are excited to see what Felix Anudike-Uzomah can do. They would love to see Echo Boydo make this roster. For those two guys getting some more run due to injuries, which you never wanted to be the case, but things happen and go as they will. What have you just, out of all of camp as a whole, what have you seen out of Felix Anudike-Uzomah in either working, he's got very limited time with the ones, but of course rotated in other spots as well with other shifts and lines. What have you seen out of Felix Anudike-Uzomah this training camp so far? And what have you seen out of Echo Boydo so far this training camp? And just how would you assess both those players up to this point with Kansas City Chiefs?
Well, yeah, and I mean, you're talking about two guys on the very opposite ends of the spectrum here when it comes to the roster. You know what I mean? Like, Felix is a first-round draft pick. He's on the team, period, end of discussion. And he's super young, and the Chiefs knew that coming in. And, again, that thumb injury set him back. But the Chiefs are going to have ultimate patience for a guy like that because they believe in the pass rush moves he has. He's kind of the nice complement to what they have with George Karlaftis, who's just a full rusher, gets up the field, where Felix has got moves and counter moves, and he's got wiggle, he's got bend to him. And so you figure, if the Chiefs lock down their two edge positions with two guys like that, kind of your lightning and thunder, if you will, then they can have kind of a nice one with that particular defensive line. But as I said, I mean, it's crazy. You go to these things and you try not to just make every story, hey, this guy is looking great in camp, but it's hard to not keep writing those stories because guys do stand out. And that's where Felix is sort of been on the other end of the spectrum, which is he's a first-round draft pick, but he was open about it last week, and Steve Spagnuolo was open about it last week, that he's been a little bit behind. He feels like he wants to be further along, and he's kind of blocked out some of the social media stuff and just wants to take it day by day and just continue growing, continue progressing, those sorts of things. And Steve Spagnuolo said that he had seen flashes from Felix last week, and the fact that he was in with the first team today, even considering all the injuries the Chiefs have, that's a positive sign because that's not something we've seen, like I said, at any point in camp up until now. So I figure he's a little bit behind, even by their own admission. But like I said, he's making the team. He's a first-round draft pick. They have high hopes for him. He's super young. And so that's kind of where he sits right now. Echo Boydo is it's just the complete opposite. And again, you're talking about a kid who went to K-State, a Lawrence kid, originally from Lawrence. And he's a guy, when you go into a rookie tryout camp, and are one of the 90 guys on the roster, I mean, almost nobody makes it. If you're just a guy that's not one of the rookies that they drafted, you really have to come in and show and impress, and he did that. And every time we get Steve Spagnuolo, it seems like he's saying something about Echo Boydo and how he really likes him. And not only that, he was with the ones today. Like I said, Jalen Watson was out, L'Jarius Sneed was out, so he got some run with the ones today. But I mean, I just kept counting up pass breakups from him. He had at least 3 that we had marked down in our books, whether it was 7-on-7 or 11-on-11. So again, this is a guy that probably still, if the Chiefs are healthy, is not one that you project to make the roster. He's a guy that probably needs a couple injuries in front of him, but he's a guy that is taking advantage of every single opportunity he's been given, and is a guy that Steve Spagnuolo seems to love. So if the Chiefs are healthy, he's probably a practice squad candidate, and I think he would stick around for that. If not, if they have a couple guys injured, then I think he's a chance to make this team and potentially one of those guys that Steve Spagnuolo relies upon because of what he's done so far. So again, those two guys, very different trajectories, very different in how they see themselves on this roster. But the fact that that a guy like Echo Boydo can come in here from a rookie tryout camp and make his way all the way to this point and get some reps with the one, that's a pretty monumental rise. I would guess we don't see that from more than about 10 to 15 players in all the training camps across the NFL. So for him to make that rise is pretty impressive and something I'm sure that the K-Staters out there should be excited about.
Yeah, Echo Boydo and just the trajectory he's had since he's graduated is just, it truly has been very impressive to see, and we'll see what it does going through the rest of training camp. Moving over to the offensive side of the football here from the players actually at camp. Got to start with everybody's favorite social media star wide receiver from last year, and the guy with all the hype in the world, Justin Ross, continues to make some plays at training camp today. He's looked good in training camp thus far. Getting your eyes on Justin Ross, what have you seen out of him so far this year at camp? And do you feel that he's moving closer and closer to maybe sneaking his way into a roster lock to be one of those receivers that she's put on their 53-man roster?
Yeah, I think so. And they tried him out today. It's something different, too. They made him a gunner on special teams, which, again, Najee Johnson was going to be out for the Chiefs, but he's out for the season, so they need to find somebody else there. So he was in there where Tommy Todd's punting, and he downed one of the balls inside the 5-yard line, that sort of thing, running down the sideline. So they're trying to figure out a way maybe potentially to have him play some special teams or get in there on special teams to make him more valuable to the roster. But I think you said it well. Somewhere between the hype and him getting cut is where Justin Ross is right now. And there was another ridiculous catch he had today, a one-handed catch in the back of the end zone. I'm sure you can find on your local Twitter account or Facebook or Instagram or whatever. It's floating around there that made national people take notice of Justin Ross again. But talked to Matt Nagy last week about him, the offensive coordinator for the Chiefs. Really good route runner, a very tall player, and he's a guy that is kind of a jump ball dude. You know what I mean? Like you saw that catch today, if you go back and watch it, where you just kind of throw it up to him and you give him a chance, and he comes down with it a lot and makes some of these spectacular catches that you don't normally expect. I mean, a little bit almost like, they're not the same position, but a little bit Jody Fortson-like. I mean, that's kind of been the one player the Chiefs have relied upon in the past to kind of throw a jump ball to, who can potentially come down with it. Now, Jody Fortson's been injured so far in camp, so you don't have that as much. But, is he a guy that's going to burn you downfield with his speed and just run by you with all the injuries he's had and that sort of stuff? No, probably not. But I think he's progressed to this point now where I don't think the Chiefs are cutting him, because if they cut him, somebody else is going to pick him up. And that's after the Chiefs kind of gave him a redshirt year last year, had him have his foot surgery, and then came back this year. I think they're going to find a way to get him on the roster. So, I mean, if you're in fantasy drafts or whatever, should you take him? No. I mean, he runs with the twos all the time. He gets very limited number one reps, and he's not a guy that wins at every single part of the field. He's a guy that, with route running on the sideline, can get himself open with some really good footwork. He's a guy in the red zone that you can throw it up to, even though Patrick Mahomes, that's not really his specialty, is to throw up a bunch of contested catch balls. But if you do have that in the red zone, he's a target you can get to. But other guys are in front of him. MBS is unquestionably in front of him. Sky Moore is unquestionably in front of him. Kadarius Toney, when he's back, is unquestionably in front of him. But I do think he's done enough to make this team. I don't think the Chiefs can sneak him through waivers and not have somebody else pick him up. So somewhere between the hype and the and getting cut, that is sort of the reality of Justin Ross. I think he'll make this roster. I think he'll make the 53. I don't think the Chiefs are going to risk losing him. And yet I don't think that he's in for a huge year for the Chiefs, except in some specialty situations where they can play to his strength.
Speaking of just those skills and strengths, we've seen a lot of him doing, those contested catch things, using his body, using his length, using the athleticism and the jumping ability. That is something and a skill set that not a lot of Chiefs wide receivers have really had, nor a skill set the Chiefs themselves have really sought out to exploit in the Patrick Mahomes, Andy Reid era here in Kansas City. How important do you think is that skill set that Justin Ross could bring to this team? And because that is kind of so different than what other wide receivers have done, how much of that dimension do you think is something the Chiefs really would think about wanting to explore and adding in addition to their offense this year?
Yeah, that's a good question. I wrote this story last year before training camp. Hey, the Chiefs have all these tall receivers. I asked Patrick Mahomes, hey, will you throw some more of them up because you've got bigger guys who can kind of box guys out and can be contested catch guys. And that was sort of a storyline last year. Hey, they could do this more. They potentially can do this more. You know, they have more guys that have this as part of their skill set. And it didn't happen. You know, it didn't happen last year. We didn't really see it with the Chiefs. And like I said, I mean, this offense and Patrick Mahomes, they've been predicated on throwing this thing to open space. And they're so good at utilizing horizontally and vertically the entire field that they don't really have to always go down the Aaron Rodgers, Devontae Adams path of just chucking that thing up there and hoping your guy comes down with the football. And that's good. I mean, it keeps you from turnovers. It keeps you from risky plays, all those sorts of things. So it's a good question. I would think red zone. And that's sort of to me where, you know, if we're talking about this being a Jody Fortson-like role for Justin Ross, the Chiefs had some real problems today scoring in the red zone against the defense. I think some of that is the defensive coverage has gotten better for the Chiefs. Guys in their second year now are more knowing, understanding what they're out there doing. Communication's better. They're closing down some of those zones a little bit quicker. But the other part of that is sometimes when you are in those close, tight spaces, you just need a dude to go make a play. And that potentially is where you could look at more contested catches. We've seen Jody Fortson, you know, thrive with that in the past. And potentially the Chiefs could go to that sort of red zone weapon with Justin Ross again this year. So I'd probably say that more than anything if they're going to utilize them in that way. But to bank on them doing more contested catch stuff after the last few years, we've just seen them be so successful, mostly without it. I would say that's probably not going to be a crazy change from this year compared to the past one.
Jesse Newell is my guest here on Mic'd Up on our Filling Place Wine and Spirits phone line. Jesse covers the Kansas City Chiefs for the Kansas City Star. You can follow Jesse on Twitter at Jesse Newell. All right, we got to talk about what is essentially the elephant in the room, or I guess the elephant not in the room still at training camp. Chris Jones, yet to report. It's been a fairly essentially radio silence from both ends. Pat Jones said he's talked to him a little bit, but it's never been about the contract. It's only been about football. Andy Reid says he hasn't talked to him in a little bit. We haven't heard from Brett Veach or any of those sides. We haven't seen any, leaked reports recently to Adam Schefter, anybody from either the agent camp or the Chiefs themselves. Just, I guess, on the very front of it, do you think, in just your opinion from what maybe you've heard or just what you're kind of seeing and kind of, pulling in from everything Jesse, do you think one side is more at fault than the other here? Is this more a Chris Jones probably asking for too much and he isn't budging? Is this more the Chiefs are, offering him too little and they're, being a little stingy? Or do you think the truth is in the middle? Where do you kind of put the weights on Chris Jones not being at camp yet without a new contract extension? Where would you kind of balance all that weight out as of right now here on August 4th?
Yeah, I really wouldn't put it more on one side or the other. I think the Chiefs, in their perfect world, they've seen Patrick Mahomes give a little. They've seen Travis Kelce give a little. And those guys, that doesn't matter as much to them because they want to keep winning championships and they're worried about legacy. And obviously a guy like Patrick Mahomes, when we're talking about him giving a little, it's giving a few $1 million a year when he's already making 46, 47, whatever the number is, which is very well paid for his position. When it comes to Chris Jones, last year he had a sensational year. And, if this was, 16 teams out there, I think they'd gladly re-up him for about what Aaron Donald's making, that $31 million a year, to lock in a franchise-type player for that type of salary to know that he could anchor the defensive line. But those two realities are hard to exist together, if that makes any sense. Like, if you see teams out there competing for the championship in the NFL, competing for the Super Bowl, you basically have these elite quarterbacks who are making money, like Patrick Mahomes, and they're doing it with a lesser roster because those quarterbacks are making money. Or you see the quarterbacks on their rookie deals where you're able to go out and sign a bunch of dudes. If you remember when Mahomes was on his rookie deal, the Chiefs went out and got like Sammy Watkins. It's just a luxury piece. Like, oh, well, just overspend for him because Mahomes is on his rookie deal and you're not spending that money. So, again, there's like a point in the middle here where you could say it's sort of tough today in the NFL, I mean, I think the NFL was releasing what players voted as its top 10 players in the NFL, and Patrick Mahomes, Chris Jones, and Travis Kelce are all in the top 10. I mean, it's hard in a 32-team league to have room in your salary cap and to finagle things in a way so that you can have 3 of the top 10 players in the NFL on the same roster and have them all be paid appropriately for what they are. And I always make the example, but like, just think about like the Bears right now. You know, the Bears, they're desperate to win. They're desperate to be competitive, have a bunch of salary cap room. They need to turn that into production. And, you know, the hypothetical has been like, what if the Bears wanted to trade for Chris Jones right now? What would they pay him as an extension? They'd pay him 31 or 32 million. They'd happily do it. To have that guy in the building, to have him help out the rest of their defense, they'd happily pay him that number because they don't have that resource available to them right now. They'd probably trade something like a first-round pick to do that too. But again, they have a quarterback on his rookie salary. They have salary cap room. They don't have 2 other superstars to pay, including a quarterback who's going to be paid as one of the highest quarterbacks until he retires at the end of his career. So I just think the reality of this is somewhere in the middle, which is if the Chiefs have a value for Chris Jones, and we've seen that they've kind of put line in the sand from when it comes to other guys, whether it was like Juju Smith-Schuster this offseason or Orlando Brown the season before, they don't seem to budge too far above the number they believe a guy is worth. And then, you know, based off of their salary situation, you can look at other teams and say they would happily pay Chris Jones 31, 32 million to be on their team and produce however he's going to produce. So I just think this is a tricky puzzle piece. This is a tricky puzzle for the Chiefs and for Jones to come together just because it's hard to have a bunch of the best players in the NFL all under one roster, all under one salary cap, and all remaining happy with what they're doing. So if Chris isn't able or willing to budge a little bit or a lot, I don't know what the number would be, then it does leave you to this situation where both sides can kind of be in the right, but also be kind of at a stalemate. And I think that's the situation we're looking at right now.
I think that's a really excellent way to kind of wrap it up, make it as kind of concise as what the situation is. Because, yeah, it is. It could be both sides are being equally reasonable in their own rights, but the NFL is a salary cap for a reason. And honestly, it's designed to make things like what the Chiefs are trying to do to be difficult to keep 3 top 10 players together. As far as Chris Jones and reporting, and I think that's kind of the next, outside of just, you know, everyone wants an extension done, the next just big question just, all right, when does he show up? The Chiefs' first preseason game is coming up on the 13th of August. Roughly, I think that's 9 days away. For you, and I guess any level of what I've been kind of calling a concernometer, if Chris, first off, more importantly, where is kind of your concern for Chris Jones and his long-term future with the Chiefs at right now? And moreover, how much would that be affected for you if we get to the first preseason game and not only does Chris Jones not show up by that point, he's not even playing. He's just not even close to this team on that first preseason game. How would that affect your concern level of, we know he's playing for the Chiefs this year. He's under contract. He's going to play. Holding out for a season doesn't help him. But we can all kind of know, and if they don't get an agreement done, he's gone after this year. Where would your concern be if he doesn't even show up past August 13th?
Yeah, you laid it out well. I mean, he's under contract this year. So that's the bottom line with this. And so the whole do nothing thing is an option. You know, like he can come in, he can try to run it back, he can have another productive season. And if he does that, then he hits the free agent open market next year and gets paid a ton of money by another team. And that to me seems like probably one of the most likely scenarios left. You know, I mean, they still could get this thing done as a long-term contract, but I would say second most likely is that, where it's just, all right, Chris, when are you going to report? You're under contract. Come run it back and see where things go from there. At this point, I don't know why we'd see him in St. Joe. Camp ends here 2 weeks from Thursday, I believe is the date, or 2 weeks from yesterday. So if you're Chris Jones, if you're keeping yourself in shape, obviously there's a ramp-up period you need to have before the first game, and you want to get yourself in football shape. But why subject yourself to training camp if you don't have to? Why check into the dorms, 3 days before they're going to be leaving anyway? I would envision potentially that he just shows up in Kansas City when the team, I believe it's done with their second training camp or their second preseason game. That would be that Saturday after then, and then gets himself ready, gets himself going. And if he's just going to want to do that and play out his contract for this year, then that's that. And, the biggest risk then is injury. if you are not at a level everyone else is at, or if you're trying to ramp things up too quickly, or if you're not in the type of game shape you need to be in, then you're opening yourself up to not only hurting the Chiefs, but hurting yourself, because if you do get hurt, then that's going to affect your future market value. So, again, I don't know the concernometer, because I think the concernometer is when you're looking at a long-term contract, when the Chiefs very easily could just say, all right, Chris, play out this year, and if you want to go make your big money after that, play really well this year, and good luck to you after that. So I don't know if the concernometer really applies to that, which is just, when does he need to get in to get himself in shape and to get himself ready to go for this season, for what's best for him and also best for the Chiefs. I would envision that'd be right after the second preseason game, when the Chiefs report back to Kansas City for practices. So you're looking probably mid-August at that point, and we'll keep tracking this and see if anything happens in the meantime here. But if it doesn't, then if he comes in around that time and is ready to go and in good shape, then I think the Chiefs will be ready to roll with him, and should see him game one. Even if it's not in a full setting, the Chiefs will ramp him back up and get him ready for this regular season, and for what's a very important season for them, obviously, coming off a Super Bowl championship.
Definitely a just very large wait and see holding pattern for everyone involved in the Chris Jones contract situation. All right, Jesse, my final two questions for you, my two for the road. First things first, I know you're much like me, a Royals fan, and they've now won 6 in a row. I just have to say, because we've made a lot of comments about them losing 100 games and being bad and being terrible. Have you gotten to enjoy any of this 6-game winning streak for the Royals? Since I know camp's a busy time, but have you gotten to enjoy any bit of this 6-game winning streak and this hot stretch of winning?
No, not really. Well, and again, I mean, I cover the Royals now. When our beat writer steps out, so the part of that where it's more emotional is completely out. But good for them, and it is a little bit surprising where you can't win 3 in a row and then you win 6 all of a sudden. It seems like it's out of nowhere, and I know the Mets are kind of not the team that they were, a little bit in disarray after the trade deadline. But good for them, and this is sort of what you need to see from them, which is promise from the current group to be able to say, hey, maybe next year can be better, and next year won't be the same disaster this was. But you heard me early in the year. I thought that they were having some bad hitting, fluky, weird luck, and I thought it would turn around, and then just never did. So maybe some of that clutch hitting is swinging back in their favor, and you'll see a better Royals here the last couple months.
It's really far down the line, but finally the Royals are proving you right, Jesse, and what your thoughts were from earlier in the season. My last thing I have for you, you covered KU and the Kansas Jayhawks for a good while with the Kansas City Star. Colorado is back in the Big 12, and they're probably adding a bunch more teams as the Pac-12 completely collapses. Are you annoyed at all that Colorado is rejoining the Big 12 after you are off the KU beat, to where you won't be able to go back to Boulder as a work trip for when KU makes another trip back out to Boulder to play the Buffaloes?
Yeah, not as annoyed, just because I'm old enough where I was covering some of those games when they still were in the Big 12. So that makes me an old head, I guess. But no, Pearl Street's great. Boulder was one of the best trips. And actually, my last year covering KU, they did me a huge solid, which was I took my wife with me to Boulder to stay in a hotel. They were going to play Colorado in that basketball game. And Colorado ended up having a couple guys with COVID. So I actually flew out there, took my wife with me, got the hotel in Boulder, checked it out, and then a couple hours before the game, it got canceled. So it was basically just like a little vacation. So Boulder holds a special place in my heart, and it's okay if other people get to go there. Our guy Gary at the Star, he can enjoy it all the same.
Very much he can. Jesse, thanks for joining me this afternoon. Have a great rest of the day, and we'll chat with you some other time.
All right, appreciate it.
As Jesse Newell of the Kansas City Star. We're going to take a timeout. When we come back, it's time for On Second Thought here on Mic'd Up. So this is about to get real weird. We're gonna have a quick on second thought here because there is some big breaking news we're gonna need to get to. So that's a little tease for you. We got some breaking news we'll need to get to here momentarily. On second thought this week is very simple for me. The Royals have won 6 in a row, and I have not once, not twice, but 3 different times this week have said it's over. We got back together on Monday. Because what we did, the Royals had won 3 in a row. That was an off day. I said, that's awesome. That's great. It's not getting to 4. Tuesday came, the actual day of that 4th game. Told Jake, they're not going to win. I think that was Jordan Lyles' start. No, that was Zach Greinke's start. I was like, Greinke hasn't been great. It's probably not going to go well. They won. And I was like, oh, wow, it's 4 games. 5th game comes with Cole Ragans, and then I said, man, I'm excited. Cole Ragans is pitching. They're facing Kodai Senga. The offense isn't going to do anything against him and his forkball. It's not going to go well. Well, they left around Senga for like 1 billion hits, only scored 4 runs, but had base runners constantly, and won that game with Cole Ragans going 6 shutout innings. I was like, okay, fine. And then briefly, right before we got off the air yesterday in our brief 20-minute show, I was like, hey man, 6 would be nice. But really? Can they? I was the most confident for number 6. But even then I was like, no, it's not going to happen. Because I thought, hey, Carlos Carrasco is the guy they have the best chance of roughing up, but something's going to happen, and this is where the loss is going to come. And no, they won 6 in a row. So my entire week of telling Jake, no, they're not going to win, and they did, that on repeat. That is my entire I was not correct for anything that entire way. It's fun. It's fun. Royals and Phillies is the matchup coming up tonight. Jordan Lyles will be on the bump for the Royals. He will face Aaron Nola, the ace, or at least secondary ace. Zach Wheeler sometimes could be considered the ace. How good Zach Wheeler is for the Phillies. Either way, he'll face Aaron Nola for the Philadelphia Phillies. Bryce Harper probably going to be in the lineup. We'll check those lineups coming up at the bottom of the show. See if we can get any lineups for you before we head off the air. But, guys like Bryce Harper and Trey Turner are in that lineup. Alec Bohm, Wichita State kid, usually in that lineup. He's been pretty good this year. Nick Castellanos is in that lineup usually. It's a very, very good Phillies team. We'll see what the Royals can do coming up, see if they can stretch that win streak to 7. If they do, I find that very funny because they will fire off a 7-game win streak very quickly from when Jake said he's going to change the odds maker question back to just purely 100 games if they win 7 in a row. I just find that very funny. We're going to take a very quick time out. When we come back, there is breaking news involving the Kansas City Chiefs. That's the tease I'll give you. If you want to know what's happening, come back and join us after this timeout. Very unhappy breaking news. Charles Omenihu has been suspended under the NFL's personal conduct policy for the first 6 games of this NFL season. This just being handed down from the commissioner's office and, of course, just being pumped out by literally everyone involved in the league, including our good friend Matt Derrick. Charles Omenihu is going to be suspended for 6 games. He is eligible to rejoin the team following their game against the Denver Broncos in week 6. He'll be eligible to return to the roster on Friday, October 13th, after their game on October 12th versus Denver. Omenihu will miss the following games against the Detroit Lions, the Jacksonville Jaguars, the Chicago Bears, the New York Jets, the Minnesota Vikings, and the aforementioned first game of the year against the Denver Broncos. Omenihu will not be with the team. This is not great. It's something that had been known to be coming. Charles Omenihu, when he was signed, had an incident in the offseason in San Jose. He was arrested on a misdemeanor of suspicion of domestic violence. That legal battle is still playing out. But this was a known possibility. When he was signed, Willie Gay was suspended last year, resulting from his misdemeanor situation. He was suspended 2 games last year. Charles Meadows getting 6. And I'll be honest, I kind of had a feeling it might come at some point. I did not think it was going to be 6. That is a big blow for the Chiefs' newest addition because that defensive line room just got even thinner. They knew, though. That's what I will also just say. I doubt the Chiefs are surprised by this. They knew when they signed him what was going on. They knew what could potentially happen. They knew, based on what it was, that he'd probably get suspended the personal conduct policy at some point. Whether they thought it was going to be 6 games or less, who knows? But they knew it was going to happen at some point. What this means, though, 1, Chris Jones back in the building sooner rather than later would be nice. He'll be on the team no matter what, but the quicker he's back in the building would be helpful. And honestly, that needs to be done because it'd be nice to get Carlos Dunlap back on this team. If you could re-sign Carlos Dunlap, you would shore up some veteran stuff. And if anything, George Karlaftis, Mike Dana, Felix Udike-Uzama, we're paging you because they are going to need a lot of people to step up in the wake of Charles Omenihu being out for 6 games. Now, I will say if he was going to miss any amount of time, the early 6 games is a perfectly fine part of the schedule for him to miss because do you really need his help to win some of these games? Detroit? Really? Jacksonville? Really? Chicago? Really? New York? Maybe, depending on if Aaron Rodgers isn't washed, and I think he is. Minnesota? That defense is terrible. And I don't know what Denver we get. We could get the Denver under Sean Payton. That's actually good and competitive. We could also get further confirmation that Russ is cooked, and that game won't be that competitive. It's also just the usual good time to remember the Chiefs have never lost to the Denver Broncos while Patrick Mahomes has been the starting quarterback of the Kansas City Chiefs. That is always fun to remember. So, based on context of opponents, it's probably not the worst thing in the world, but you still don't like it when a member of your team is suspended for 6 games. When you're short a body for 6 of your 17 games. But he'll be back for the game against the Chargers. He'll be back for the second game against Denver. He'll be back for the match against Miami. That'll be out in Germany. He'll be back for all the toughest matchups. And knowing how the Chiefs were probably prepared for this and some other factors, he'll probably be really much warmed up and ready to go more than anything else. But the biggest things out of this is you want Chris Jones back in the building sooner. That would be nice. Carlos Dunlap will be nice if you could get him on the team. And then just guys are going to have to step up. Turk Wharton should be back very soon. Hopefully he'll be back to practicing. Maybe he could help out, at least on that interior. And on the edges, Dana, Karlaftis, Felix Udike-Uzama, even a little Malik Herring, Joshua Kando, all those different players have now been thrusted into a more important role to kick off the season with the suspension of Charles Omenihu coming up this year for the first 6 games. So that is the big breaking news that needs to be addressed for the Kansas City Chiefs and their team coming up this season. The other suspensions handed out at the exact same time. I want to get to these as well because this is not the only suspension handed out today. If I can quickly find them. They're not, because they're not Chiefs players. They're not always aggregated. There they are. Saints Pro Bowl running back Alvin Kamara has been suspended 3 games for violating the NFL's personal conduct policy. The suspension stems back to his arrest in Las Vegas, where he and Chris Lamons were also arrested in that same incident when Chris Lamons was playing for the Kansas City Chiefs. Chris Lamons is also, as he now plays for the Colts, will be suspended 3 games as well. The other suspensions coming up today, in addition to Charles Omenihu, Seahawks wide receiver Dwayne Eskridge is going to be suspended for the first 6 games of the NFL season for also violating the NFL's personal conduct policy. So those are all the players being affected and being hit with some of these personal conduct suspensions. The NFL also, I guess we'll use this time as well. This actually came out from the NFL yesterday. They made a change to the personal conduct policy rulings yesterday. The NFL, whether it's been made official, it is going to be made official to where the NFL will now give themselves overreach to suspend players via the rulings in the personal conduct policy for things they do prior to being in the league. So college players, if they are arrested, put on suspicion, or, accused of doing certain things during their draft process or while they're getting ready to come into the NFL out of school, the NFL is going to update their personal conduct policy to where they may now, as they enter the league as rookies, may be affected by the personal conduct policy. That had not been something that was eligible for the NFL to do at any point up until now. The most recent thing was, Jalen Carter, the Georgia defensive lineman who had some incidents last season, including just the tragic death of 2 Georgia staff members. That whole very messy and very unfortunate situation, if the NFL deemed that would be a suspendable offense under the personal conduct policy, the NFL, under their new system, could have punished Jalen Carter on his way into the league. That is not retroactive, so he cannot still be done that way, but that is something the NFL is now exploring to do with these most recent suspensions under the personal conduct policy. It's an interesting policy. It is something that it's very broad sometimes with what can be found under the personal conduct policy. You often do not need to be convicted of anything. You can even kind of be almost exonerated of anything, and the NFL still might suspend you. It is a very wide breaching thing is their personal conduct policy, but it was great doing the CBA, and players know what is part of it and what they're expected to do. But the Chiefs being hit with that, with Charles Omenihu being suspended for the first 6 games of the NFL season. We'll take a timeout. We'll wrap things up with a mic drop and get you the lineups for Royals and the Phillies tonight. Coming up next to wrap up Mic'd Up. Time for the mic drop here on Mic'd Up, wrapping up not just today, but this week's edition of programming here on 580 WIBW. Before we get to that, though, lineups for Royals and Phillies are up. First for your Kansas City Royals, Michael Garcia will lead off. He's playing third base, followed by Bobby Witt Jr. at short. Michael Massey, your second baseman, is batting third. Let's get weird. Salvador Perez, your first baseman, is batting cleanup. Edward Olivares is your DH. He is batting fifth. MJ Melendez in left field is batting sixth. Freddie Fermin, the catcher, batting seventh. Drew Waters in right field will bat eighth. And Kyle Isbell, your center fielder, will bat ninth. All in support of Jordan Lyles. For the Philadelphia Phillies, here is their lineup. Kyle Schwarber will lead off. He's their DH. Alec Bohm will be at third, followed by Bryce Harper, who's playing first base. A couple of weird first basemen in this matchup. Nick Castellanos in right field is batting cleanup. Bryson Stott is at second. JT Realmuto, their catcher, is batting sixth. Brandon Marsh in left field will bat seventh. Trey Turner at short, he will bat eighth. And Johan Rojas in center field, he will bat ninth. As all in support of Aaron Nola for the Philadelphia Phillies. Worth noting, only one player on this Royals team has seen Aaron Nola. It is Salvador Perez. He has seen him twice. He is 0 for 2 with a strikeout. We'll see what that does going forward. And then one last little bit of news I want to sneak in here before we wrap things up. Reports are coming out. Arizona is going to have a formal announcement tomorrow. To join the Big 12. They will officially announce that they're joining the Big 12 coming out tomorrow. That is reports coming out from multiple sources, which lines up with a meeting for Arizona that they're having. And the Big 12 is having a meeting tonight to more than likely formally approve Arizona's application to the conference. So coming up tomorrow morning or sometime tomorrow, there might be an official announcement of Arizona coming to the Pac-12, Arizona State and or Utah likely to follow as this realignment shuffle continues to turn and twist and toil, and I don't know when it'll end. I hope at some point it does and we just focus on the games themselves, but money drives everything, and money is going to keep turning around until we figure out whatever is going on in the world, crazy world of college athletics. But finally, to wrap things up with the mic drop, I have it in essentially two parts here. First things first, thank you as always for joining me on an independent solo show. It means a lot for y'all to stick around just to hear me usually ramble. And of course, thank you to our great guests of David Lesky and Jesse Newell this afternoon as well. But thank you for joining me, not just today for just myself. I know I speak for Jake as well. Thank you for joining us all week and being a part of our great week of programming here on 580 WIBW. And the second part, maybe the most important part, Royals do something crazy. Get a seventh win tonight. I don't know if it happens. You're trying to win 2 Jordan Lyles starts in a row, even if like he doesn't get the win, but you're trying to win 2 of those games in a row. That feels like it's not supposed to be allowed. And Aaron Nola, pretty good as well as on with that Phillies team. But we'll see what happens. Either way, even if it's a bad weekend, the Royals won 6 in a row. And we're going to let that roll just a little bit longer. That'll do it for my tip today. 580 Sports Talk with Dan Lucero is coming up next. Have a great rest of your weekend.